In March 2024, we spoke to a former Highland Mainline manager who tells us about his career and about the challenge of keeping the railway running.
Well, my name is Robert Heasman. I have like to think I have been lifelong with the British Railways, but it wasn't actually quite the case because of the privatisation things. I came to Scotland, back to Scotland in 1984 as the area manager of what was then Tayside, which was Perth and Dundee, looking for the operating side of the railway, and was still there when we had one of our regular reorganisations, which resulted in the creation of the area manager ScotRail North, which included Perth, Dundee, Aberdeen and Inverness. A very nice, large piece of railway to operate with. And I was there until 91, I think, when things started to go pear-shaped with the start of privatisation and various other reorganisations. And after that, I ended up joining what was then the British Rail's consultancy business called Transmark, on the basis that it allowed me to still keep living in this delightful part of the world, but go and work all over the world for the next few years of my career. Very much a railway, I'd say an operator, but area management was one of those functions where you were dealing with all the key parts of operating or running a railway. So I was dealing with part of the team with the civil engineers and the mechanical engineers and the signalling engineers. And relevant to you guys is, of course, that the Highland Mainline, initially I had the bottom half of it up to Dromochta and Dalwhinnie, but of course latterly had the whole of the Highland Mainline as part under my operating responsibilities. Always had an interest in transport. Dare I have to use, well, I can say it now because I'm far enough away from it. I was never a great train spotter, but I was always interested in transport. At school, I enjoyed geography, and again, transport links and things like that. And then decided and looked around at the time when leaving school was that wasn't really, didn't really know what to do and wasn't quite ready to go to uni. And at the time, the railways had a sort of junior entry into their business, British Railways did in those days, to become what I would now could look on and perhaps facetiously call becoming a super clerk or something like that. So basically I started as a booking clerk and being taught all the ropes in and around what was then the Edinburgh division of British Rail Scottish Region. And after that, towards the end of that, I began to realise that I probably ought to get a little bit more further up. And if I was going to make progression, I wanted to, see if I could join the management training scheme. And at the same time, and this is sort of quite interesting, it was going on not necessarily in the railway at this time, but this was the start of sandwich degree courses. And Dundee Bell Street Tech, as it then was, had just started a business management degree course, which was a sandwich course, and British Rail very kindly put me through the sandwich degree course for me to come out as a slightly more senior person than a junior clerk. And thereafter, I suppose the rest is history, as it were. Sort of managed to work my way up a few steps up the tree to end up and back, coming round the houses, if you like, in organisational terms, down south and then back again, to be the area manager at Dundee, which was really quite an interesting full circle of life coming back to there. So that was really how I ended up with British Rail, and determined, therefore enjoyed it, liked to keep going, and as I say, although I wasn't directly involved in BR after I left Tayside, I was still always very much involved with railways, going through what was the consultancy side. As I say, some of it was bits of time in Africa, quite a lot of time in Ireland, and quite a lot of chunks in the Philippines, of all places. And so that's how I ended up with the railways, and really quite happy to have done so, and sort of feel it was part of a life. No railway family connections, I have to say that, which is often quite a lot of people that you come across. Of course, they are, got family connections going back generations, actually. When I arrived on the scheme, it was just an unstaffed station on the Highland Mainline with not a particularly regular service, and I think that was one of the things that people were looking at, particularly towards the end of the 80s, to try and get a better service for the intermediate stations on the Highland Main Line. And of course now I think it's a bit better. I'm not absolutely up to date with the timetable on the route at the moment, but I think you do have a few more trains than you probably had in my day, I think, that stop there. Yes, I suppose whether I want this said publicly, I think the problem is, in a way, it was what my generation, we started this process of having the post-Beeching era, which obviously I very much beyond it, if you like. I mean, when I joined the railways in 1968, I think it was, and they were still closing the branch lines around this part of the world. Interestingly, I think it's an aside, but I think I remember on one of the last trains down to Leven, given that they're just about to reopen, well, the line is now back and they're now running test trains down to Leven, to put it back again. So that's an area to come full circle. And it was also the era when I think they were trying the marketing of the thing rather than just selling tickets started. And I'm trying to remember, I can't remember the right phrases, sort of market pricing of train tickets, and the start of a more commercial business approach to getting business. That was going on in the background over most of my early career, I think. And this is why, if you like, the focus, and my time was defending all the time, I have to say, to the smaller stations, why you didn't get trains stopping at you. It was a sort of constant battle between trying to placate the local people, but also recognising that the industry was really always struggling for cash, struggling for money, and they were always going to end up going for the biggest deals. I mean, one of the issues that probably is an aside to say is that I can remember the arguments about why when the diesel units came on, why there was never enough room for bikes. Now at the time, people were more interested in putting people sitting on the seats rather than having empty spaces for bikes. Now I know that's kind of gone full circle, because you're probably aware that there is now a train that runs around on the West Island, or a unit on the West Island, that's designed to take the bikes. And I notice on the latest sort of iteration of tidying up the current 170s, they've all got a bike spaces on them. Now that's the sort of era when in the 80s we were just trying to keep the railway running. I think in a political sense was where our priorities lay, and that's suppose one of the good things now that with hopefully through that we recognise we have a place, but it doesn't necessarily, I think, immediately give too much succour to folk like yourselves sitting at Dunkeld and Burnham, or Blair Atholl, as you say, and I'm not sure what happens at places like Dalwhinnie these days, or even Kingussie, or certainly Newton Moor. Pitlochry, I think most things stop at, don't they? I think. Yeah, as I said, I mean, well, maybe you can. I mean, I'm far enough away to say. I mean, I think this is the sort of frustrations that I now feel looking back on it. Although I can be only too well aware of the kind of arguments that the people that are actually trying to run the railway are living with. I think an awful lot of them privately will say, that's it, but this is where the constraints lie at the moment. I don't know, again, it's dangerously political, but it's going to be, well, whatever. I think whoever the future governments, either of Scotland or the UK, say, they may be saying nice things, but the railways are always never quite get up the agenda enough. And I'd like to say that I think in our era that some of the managers, and you've probably heard the name Chris Green, I think he was one of the first ones to be able to do it, but some of the others, senior guys, probably more in the early days of privatisation, well, 80s and then into privatisation, they were pretty good at demonstrating that we did, we were trying to keep the cost down, but we were also trying to grow the business in a way that was sustainable. But what I think is there is an underlying love of the industry still,